My son converted to mythology. His views are a bit unconventional, and frankly, it has me questioning everything I know about religion. My son, Richie, never really excelled at anything. That might sound harsh coming from me, but it's the honest truth. His grades have always been mediocre at best. His athletic prowess is non-existent, and he's never been much of a charmer. That all changed when he started praying to the Greek gods. I remember the exact moment that I knew something within him had shifted. He was practicing his archery in the backyard. I was shocked to see the bow in his hand. When I peered out the window, most days I couldn't drag him away from his monitor for more than a few minutes. I was even more astonished to see that he was good. I shuffled outside to join him, seriously impressed by his skyrocketing sharpshooting. I watched in amazement as he drew back the bowstring, aimed steady, and focused. He released it, sending the arrow whirring through the air. Bullseye. What the? Hey Dad, watch this, he smirked as he loaded another projectile. His grip on the bow was firm and unwavering. He let it fly. He split the previous arrow, hitting the exact mark that he had the shot prior. My jaw fell to the floor. He looked pleased with himself as a smug grin plastered itself across his face. Pretty cool, huh? How did you do that? A twinkle shimmered in his eye. I've been praying, Dad. That's great, son. I'm really proud of you, I exclaimed, clasping his shoulder. I've been trying to turn that boy into a decent God-fearing Christian ever since he was a child. He'd never readily accepted any form of religion until now. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. I prayed to Apollo, and he's been guiding my shots. My heart sank. I mentally facepalmed myself. Mythology, of course. You're joking, right? His joyous expression faltered. No, I'm dead serious. I knew I had to nip this in the bud. Look, son, the Greek gods aren't real. They're made up. Tears welled in the corners of his eyes. I'd struck a nerve. They are real. You just don't think I can ever actually be good at anything. Screw you, Dad. He stormed into the house, slamming the door behind him. I furiously marched inside after him. Hey, you don't talk to me like that. Go to your room. He was already loudly stomping up the stairs, blatantly ignoring my futile attempt at a punishment. My wife glanced up from her crossword puzzle. What was that all about? Wham! I winced. Oh, he's just upset that I told him that mythology is fake. I worry about that kid, Lindsay. She shook her head, returning to the newspaper. You know him. Give it a week. He'll forget all about it. I sure hope you're right. I gave it a week. He did not forget all about it. In fact, he seemed more engrossed in it than ever. Books and articles littered the coffee table, and every conversation inevitably circled back to some new fortune that had inconspicuously befallen him. $100 mysteriously wormed its way into his backpack after praying to Plutus. His grades soared after a conversation with Coas. He even claimed that Eros helped him get a girlfriend. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a tad bit envious. Lindsay, all I'm saying is, it's starting to freak me out. He's been worshipping all these false idols, and everything just falls into his lap. Honestly, it's starting to scare me. Brian, it's not hurting anything. He's just on a lucky streak. Maybe it's karma paying him his due after neglecting him for all these years. Honey, you were raised Catholic. We both know there's no such thing as karma. She rolled her eyes and pursed her lips. You get my point. He's been looked down on his whole life. It was bound to happen sooner or later. I sighed. Okay, you have a point, but don't you think it's a little strange that it just so happens to coincide with? The front door swung open and Richie sauntered through. Hey Dad, guess what? What is it, buddy? I just had my first kiss, and guess who helped me do it? I narrowed my eyes at him, subduing the urge to slap that goofy smirk off his face. Who? I said through clenched teeth. Eros. That's it. I'm tired of this stupid Greek mythology jargon. This has gone on for too long. If I hear you utter one more word about some silly make-pretend deed, I'll ground you for a month. Got it. His bottom lip began quivering, and tears flowed down his cheeks. I hate you, Richie shouted as he sprinted off to his room. Brian, though apologize to him right now. You were way out of line. A pang of guilt stabbed me like a bayonet as my wife's icy glare bore into my skull. You're right. That was uncalled for. I don't know what came over me. I trudged up to my son's room and shamefully knocked on the door. Hey, Richie, I need to talk to you for a second. I shouldn't have yelled at you like that. Go away, please. I want to make things right. I heard shuffling from behind the barrier. He reluctantly opened up, just a sliver. "It's okay, Dad. I promise. I know you didn't mean it." "You sure?" He shut the door in my face, effectively cutting me off. Before he did, though, I could have sworn I glimpsed something in his room that shouldn't have been there. Something big. He'd been keeping a secret from me, and I was itching to know what it was. I called in sick to work the next day and waited until my wife left for her morning meeting. Then I crept up to Richie's room. It was a school day, and he wouldn't be home for another 6 hours. This was it. My heart pounded like a jackhammer as I reached for the doorknob. Locked. I should have known. I fished for the key I kept above the frame for emergencies. It clinked off my fingers, falling to the carpeted floor below. I pumped my fist as I bent to retrieve it. I slipped the key into the lock, subconsciously holding my breath. My eyes grew wide, as saucers, when I saw what lay inside. In the right corner of my son's room sat an ornate altar. Neatly constructed white painted wood formed a multi-leveled shrine. Dozens of intricate statuettes were perched atop it. Offerings of money, bread, and other little trinkets were spread before them. But that's not the reason I darted out of there and expelled my demons all over the bathroom floor, because lying dead at the foot of the pedestal was a bloody disemboweled goat carcass. White-hot rage enveloped me. Richie was making sacrifices to these things, not under my roof. I tromped down to the garage, returning moments later brandishing a hammer. I smashed every one of those figurines to rubble, leaving a path of wrathful destruction in my wake. I didn't feel one inkling of remorse about it either. If he wanted to praise fake entities, fine by me, but not in my house, and certainly not at the expense of another living creature. I waited on pins and needles for him to come home to discover his ruined masterpiece. I didn't even bother to clean up the bathroom. Richie wanted to murder animals to satisfy his cult dolls. Great, he could deal with the aftermath. He sashayed through the door a few hours later. He didn't say a word to me as he beelined for his room. I drummed my fingers against the coffee table, and there it was. Richie barreled down the stairs, face red as a fire engine. "What the hell, Dad? You destroyed my altar. Do you even know how long it took me to set that up?" "No, and I don't care. You killed a goat in your room. Richie, a goat for God's sake. What is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? You completely wrecked my room because you don't agree with my religious beliefs. You're a psycho," he screamed animatedly as he attempted to storm off. "Oh, no, not this time. Stop right there." He halted, seething with resentment. I could practically see the steam wafting from his ears. "You're going to clean up that mess," I said, slapping a box of hefty bags into his palm. "I hope you die," he mumbled, almost imperceptibly. "Well, keep on dreaming, buddy." I dragged him upstairs by his wrist, releasing him once we'd reached his debris-covered room. "I'm going to come back up here in a few hours, and this place had better be spotless. Do you hear me? Spotless. And when you're done, you can get to work on that," I said, pointing to the bathroom. "Phew, what is that?" "My reaction to your little pagan ritual. Now, get to it." He glowered at me, flinging the door shut. My wife returned home shortly after. "Hey honey, you're home early." "Yeah, I called off today. I was feeling a little under the weather." "I'm sorry to hear that. I'm assuming Richie's in his room." I nodded, shooting her a concerned glance. "Oh, he's in his room, all right. He's up there cleaning up the butchered goat corpse he left to rot while he was at school." Her face went ghostly white. "Oh my God, you're joking." "I wish I was." Her expression sank. "Okay, I think we should call a specialist. This kind of behavior isn't normal. I'll get on it first thing tomorrow." That night I lay awake, unable to rid my mind of the abomination I had walked in on earlier. That day, was my son going to grow up to be a serial killer? What would happen when the gods inevitably asked him to graduate to something larger? I didn't want to know. I did my best to cram the notion to the furthest recesses of my sleep-addled brain. Eventually, I managed to drift into a fitful slumber. I awoke with debilitating pain in my abdomen. Every cell in my body screamed at me. I struggled to breathe through my torment. I cried out in agony, waking my wife. Brian, what's wrong?" "It hurts." "What hurts? Do you need me to take you to the hospital?" I gazed up at her, pallid and drenched in sweat. "I'm taking that as a yes. Lean on me for support, and I'll help you to the car." I somehow made it to Lindsay's Chevy Tahoe, and we raced to the emergency room. I was deemed a serious case, and they rushed me to a room immediately. Doctors and nurses scurried around me, taking vitals, and desperately trying to pinpoint the source of my anguish. It was determined that I needed a CAT scan. About another agonizing hour later, the doctor shuffled in with my result. The grim expression on his face told me that it wasn't good. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I only had months to live. Lindsay burst into tears. I could barely fathom the doctor's words. I couldn't have cancer. I'd always had a clean bill of health. I sat there, zoning out as the doctor ran through our options. I didn't hear a word he said. Just then my son trundled through the door, accompanied by my sister. They received the awful news, and my sister broke down into hysterics. Richie looked oddly unfazed. Mom, Aunt Stephanie, can I have a minute alone with Dad? There's something I need to tell him. They nodded, consoling each other as they left us alone. Richie approached my bed and gingerly scooped up my hand in his. Dad, I've been praying for you. I really appreciate that. Son, thank you, I said, eyes sparkling with hope. Even if the worst scenario was to play out, maybe something good could still come of it. Suddenly, a wide manic grin stretched across his face, and I could see malice behind his pupils. He squeezed my hand tightly. A sense of hopeless dread flooded into my heart. Richie leaned in close and whispered into my ear, I've been praying to Hades, and he's going to take your soul.